Welcome to tonight's Terror, where you can expect original scary stories. Nothing here is written or narrated by AI. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for visiting, and enjoy the story.
It was a dream come true. My wife, Sarah, and I had been trying and failing to buy a house of our own for more than 2 years. I'd lost count of the bids we'd put in on this property or that, none ever standing a chance. Finally, we got the call from our realtor, telling us our bid had been accepted and we were going to be homeowners. After 2 months of anticipation, we moved into the house. It was a Victorian-style place on the edge of an old mill town. We were eager to turn the page on our lives as renters and embrace homeownership. We weren't ready. It was a solid place, full of charm and character. The kind of house where every creak in the floorboard seemed to tell a story. The previous owners had left in a hurry, the realtor told us, but the price was right. It felt like fate. For the first week, everything was perfect. We spent our days unpacking, decorating, and brainstorming ideas to get the most out of the layout. The house had a warmth to it, despite its age. Even the attic, though large and cluttered with old furniture and dusty boxes, felt just like another part of the house's rustic charm. The realtor had told us the seller would drop $5,000 off the price if we were willing to clear the attic ourselves. If you've ever bought a home, you know that this is a moment when any reduction in price sounds like a miracle. So we didn't blink. We spent a week in that house, believing we'd found our forever home. It began with the noises. Late at night, after we had turned in, there would be faint creaks coming from above, soft, almost imperceptible. The kind of sounds you'd expect from an old house. Wood settling, the wind brushing the roof. But then the noises became more distinct, nearly rhythmic. I didn't say anything to Sarah at first, but I thought it sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing back and forth in the attic. I remember the first night Sarah mentioned it. We were lying in bed, the house still dark, when she reached over and gripped my arm. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I listened, straining my ears in the silence. Then, a creak, like an aching floorboard, protesting under weight. It was faint, but unmistakable. A moment later, another, followed by another, and another. "Probably just the house settling," I said, trying to reassure both her and myself, but I knew something was wrong. The sound was too regular. I lay awake, both straining to hear and desperate to hear nothing else. I heard a story from a friend with an old house when I was in high school. He talked about a ghost walking in circles on the floor above his bedroom every night. I couldn't remember if anything ever came of it. Something about that story clung to me and was nibbling at my consciousness now. Over the next few nights, the sounds grew louder. The steps, if that's what they were, seemed to grow more agitated, as if whatever or whoever was up there was becoming restless, almost daring us to hear it. Sarah's anxiety deepened. She couldn't sleep, and truthfully, neither could I. Each night, we would lie in bed, listening in silence as the footsteps echoed above us, wondering if we were imagining it, or if something else was going on. I don't mean to suggest we just suffered this way without ever checking the attic. Each day, after hearing the noises the night before, I would go up to the attic and check, finding nothing. One night, around midnight, the noises stopped. The silence should have been a relief. But it wasn't. We were both wide awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next sound, and then we heard it. A deep scratch. A long, deliberate drag across the attic floor. The sound of something heavy being moved. My skin prickled, and I felt Sarah stiffen beside me. "That's it. We should check the attic now," she whispered. I nodded and replied, "You're right. This is stupid. This is our house." Although, the last thing I wanted was to go up there in the dead of night. But I had to put her mind, and mine, at ease. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand drawer and stalked into the hallway. The rectangular cutout in the ceiling, where the folding ladder came down, was just ahead. I paused, half hoping for some sound from above that could confirm that this was way over my pay grade as man of the house. Something to compel me to call the cops instead of handling this myself. No. Just silence now. I crept forward, my eyes fixed on the attic door pull. I grasped the handle and began to pull the ladder down. The dry wood and exhausted metal hinges groaned as it unfolded. Every time I'd been up to the attic since buying the house, I told myself I was going to put grease on the hinges, but I never got around to it. The sound seemed to echo through the house, unnaturally loud against the stillness. Sarah hovered near the bedroom door, her eyes wide with fear. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I climbed up the flimsy steps, the flashlight trembling in my hand. When I reached the top, I shone the light into the attic. The beam flickered over old furniture and boxes of outdated clothing. The air was thick, stale, with a musty smell of neglect. I cleared the ladder and stood in the attic, feeling the boards creak beneath me. Every corner I peered into revealed nothing but newly disturbed clouds of dust motes and stacks of moldering boxes. But the unease remained. I made my way to the far corner of the attic, where the sound had seemed loudest. My flashlight lit up a large, dusty chest, covered in cobwebs, but nothing else. I crouched down, pressing my hand to the floor where I thought the dragging noise had come from. The wood felt cold, smooth under my fingers. Examining my fingers, I saw that I'd disturbed a layer of dust on the floor. Turning quickly, I scanned the attic one last time before heading back down. I didn't want to admit it, but I was more than relieved to find nothing. Not even an animal to tangle with. I climbed back down the ladder and gave Sarah a forced smile. "There's nothing up there," I said, trying to sound convincing. It could be the wind or the house settling. Assembling a narrative to calm her, I said, "I bet you it's a raccoon or a squirrel that found out it could get out of the weather up there. We can bring in an exterminator." She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. We both knew something wasn't right. Over the next few nights, the noises only grew louder. The pacing turned into shuffling, and sometimes it sounded like objects were being moved, thudding heavily against the floor. It had been days since I'd called to schedule an exterminator visit, but it would be 3 more days and nights until our appointment. It wouldn't have made a difference. We soon found out. It was late, past midnight, when we were both startled awake by a loud thump, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Faster this time, moving across the attic directly above us. Sarah sat bolt upright in bed, her face pale. "Someone's up there. A person," she hissed, her voice vibrating with fear. I couldn't see her face in the dark, but I knew it was pinched with panic. "I heard them. They're walking around right now." My pulse quickened. The footsteps continued, pacing erratically, then stopping for a moment before resuming, faster, heavier, as if whoever was up there was tired of sneaking around. Well, I was tired too. tired of dealing with this crap in my own house. I grabbed the flashlight, heart pounding in my chest. This time, I didn't hesitate. I yanked the ladder down and climbed up as fast as I could, the flashlight trembling in my grip. As I reached the top, I felt a cold draft hit me. Something was different here. Cool air was moving from the far end of the attic and blowing against my face. I swung the light toward the far end of the attic and my heart nearly stopped. In the corner, near the chest I had checked on days ago, the wall was moved, shifted slightly to reveal a door I had never seen before. The realization hit me all at once. There was another room up here. Before I could react, I heard the softest slide of a foot on the floor. Not from beyond the door, but directly behind me. I whipped the flashlight around and froze. Only feet away stood a figure, a gaunt, hollow-eyed man, his clothes tattered and his hair matted. His eyes seemed to pop from his skull, feral and desperate, as they met mine. My breath caught in my throat. "Can I come downstairs?" he rasped. The voice was small and ragged. A cold bead of sweat slipped down the center of my back. Sarah's terrified voice called out from below, but I couldn't move. The man took a slow step forward, his eyes locked on mine. "Your bed is so warm." I staggered back, the floorboards protesting beneath my feet. He moved with terrifying calm, his body swaying slightly as he stepped closer, until he was mere inches from me. The flashlight flickered. I could use it as a weapon if I had to. I stumbled, nearly falling as I tried to reach the gap in the floor where the ladder waited. But before I could reach it, the man lunged, grabbing my arm with a grip so cold it felt like death itself. "Don't leave me here in the dark," he whined, almost screeching. His face was twisted in a pained, grimacing smile. I could feel an overwhelming despair emanating from his eyes. But there was no reasoning with this man. With a desperate jerk, I broke free. Not caring what happened to me, I threw myself down the ladder headfirst. Sarah was waiting below, her face pale and her hands trembling as she tried to arrest my fall. "Run! Fucking go!" I shouted, my voice animal, barely recognizable. We bolted down the stairs and out of the house, the front door banging behind us. As Sarah and I stood in the neighbor's driveway gasping for air, the house loomed in front of us, dark and silent, like a predator, crouched and waiting. My heart pounded in my chest as I felt my guts churning, but I knew I couldn't calm down, not yet. I pulled Sarah closer, holding her shaking frame as we both tried to make sense of what had just happened. "What was that?" Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Who was he?" I had no answers. My mind was still racing, still trying to process the man, the cold touch, his bewildering words. It was impossible. Why would anyone want to be up there? I looked back at the house, expecting to see movement in the attic window. But there was nothing, just darkness. A horrifying thought crept into my mind. Was he real? Everything had felt so vivid, his grip, the terror in his eyes. But it was like he had materialized out of nowhere. "We can't stay here," I muttered. "We need to call the police. Should have called them days ago." Sarah nodded, her face pale, and I fumbled for my phone. My fingers shook as I dialed, and soon we were relaying the whole unbelievable story to the 911 operator. She did her best to sound concerned, but I could tell from her voice that she thought we were just a scared couple in an old creaky house. Still, within minutes, flashing lights pierced the darkness as the police arrived. 2 officers approached cautiously. They listened as I explained what had happened in the attic. They exchanged a skeptical glance, but they were professional. pulling out their flashlights and headed inside while another officer stayed with us. Sarah and I watched, clutching each other as they entered the house. We could hear them wandering around for several long minutes. Saw them pass in front of windows on the first floor and start to climb the stairs. Soon we heard muffled voices from the attic, and then suddenly a loud thud. We both jumped, our eyes locked on the house, waiting. The officers came back downstairs and out the front door. Walking down the driveway, I saw their faces were grim. One of them held out a large, antique-looking key. "There's a door up there," he said, "hidden in the wall. It leads to a whole other room behind the proper attic." I nodded, my stomach twisting. "I saw it, but the officer held up a hand. There's no one there now, but we did find evidence that someone's been living up there for a long time. Blankets, old clothes, some food wrappers. There's also evidence he's been visiting the main part of your house. We found a few framed photos of the two of you with his other things." Sarah let out a strangled gasp. "How long do you think he's been up there?" The officer shook his head. "Hard to say, but from the looks of it, easily months. I think more. Might have been sneaking in and out whenever you were away from the house. We'll need to investigate further." My blood ran cold. The thought of that man watching us, listening to us, waiting in the ceiling while we went about our lives, it was too much. Sarah's grip on my arm tightened, her knuckles white. I could see the panic in her eyes, the same panic that mirrored my own. "We're not going back in there," I said firmly. The officer nodded. "That's probably for the best. We'll conduct a full search and lock everything down tonight. You'll need somewhere to stay for the time being." The next few days were a blur. We stayed at a nearby motel, barely sleeping, jumping at every noise. The police investigated the house thoroughly, combing through every inch, but the man, the one I'd seen, was never found. They suspected he was a squatter, someone who'd been living unnoticed for years, perhaps, slipping in and out when no one was around. But there were other things they couldn't explain. The realtor showed us photos on his phone as he was preparing to sell the place. He found all sorts of bizarre stuff around the attic. Strange symbols carved into the beams of the rafters. Old, yellowed papers covered in incomprehensible writing tucked behind the walls. And the door, the secret room. There was no record of either in the house's blueprints. It was like it had been added long after the house was built. Sarah and I never went back. We hired a moving company to clear out our things. We sold the house at a loss, not caring about the money anymore. The relief of leaving was worth every penny. One day, a few weeks later, Sarah and I were going through the boxes and bags that had been shipped to us after the house was cleared. She was unpacking a box of sweaters that had been pulled from her closet at the old place. Her scream brought me running from the other room. "What is it?" I shouted. "Look!" She was pressed against the wall beside the door, with her finger extended toward the bed. Her sweater lay on our bed, half balled up. I stepped closer and peered over the thick collar. Inside the neck of the sweater was a scattering of teeth, all molars. Some stained dark brown with blood. The police came and collected the sweater. We didn't sleep for a few nights after that. Just a grotesque epilogue to the horrible story we had wandered into, I guess. The house, they said, had a history. An old man had lived there decades ago. A recluse who was never seen by the neighbors. Rumors swirled about strange noises, odd comings and goings at night, but nothing was ever documented. We heard that when he died, the house changed hands a few times, each owner leaving quickly. always with an excuse, a job transfer, family issues. But it was always sudden, like they couldn't sell and get out fast enough. We moved away to a new town, a new place where the only creaks in the floorboards would come from our own footsteps.